briefing by the officials, all three officials of the National Task Team of the ANC Women's League. Right next to me, a stalwart, a mother of ours that needs no introduction, Umambale Gambete. She is the convener of the ANC Women's League National Task Team. Seated next to her is the coordinator of the ANC Women's League National Task Team, Comrade Marupini Ramakhuba. And then right at the end is the fundraiser of the task team, Umama Comrade McQueen Letzoha Matai. Without wasting any time, comrades, colleagues and friends, this press briefing is called to give you an update on the state of readiness for the 13th National Conference, and I'll hand over to, I almost said the DSG, I'll hand over to the coordinator for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kusela, and good afternoon to everyone that is here, members of the media, comrades and friends. I'm just going to be reading the statement of the ANC Women's League National Task Team. The 11th of July 2023 marks a year since our appointment of the ANC Women's League National Task Team following the disbandment of the 12th ANC Women's League NEC by the African National Congress NEC in June 2022. The entity's singular mandate was to establish ANC Women's League structures from branch level to ultimately convening the 13th National Conference. All this had to be done within a period of 12 months, and we are pleased to say that we adhered to the terms of reference we were given by the ANC NEC, as we are now a few days away from the 13th National Conference of the ANC Women's League. As previously communicated, the 13th National Conference of the ANC Women's League will be convened under the theme, in our open quote, advancing decisive action towards the full liberation and emancipation of women. The theme of the National Conference encapsulates the urgent need to address the persistent barriers that hinders women's emancipation and equality. It calls for a proactive and determined approach to dismantling discriminatory structures, norms and practices that limits women opportunities and infringe upon their rights. The theme of our conference further acknowledges that achieving true liberation and emancipation for women requires more than incremental changes, notwithstanding that great strides have been made to date. It necessitates bold and transformative action at individual, societal, and institutional levels. Ours is to underscore the importance of collective efforts, collaboration, and strategic interventions to challenge gender disparities in political, economical, social, and cultural spheres. By advancing decisive action, we aim to create a society where every woman can exercise agency, enjoy equal rights, and actively participate in shaping their own destinies. As we all know, one of the motive forces of the ANC's NDR is definitely women. Therefore, the non-sexist part of our NDR remains exactly that. To this end, and in line with 3.1 or Rule 3.1 of the ANC Women's League Constitution, which is instructive that the character of ANC Women's League is based on the policies and principles of the ANC. The National Conference will then engage in discussions based on the above imperatives and drawing from the resolutions of the ANC's 55th National Conference. The policy discussions, which will be elaborated upon at a later stage, will cover socio-economic, organizational renewal, international relations, legislation and governance, among other policies areas, with the cross-cutting theme being how the ANC Women's League will leverage on the enabling legislative policy environment to realize the full liberation and emancipation of women. Of course, we'll also embark on the process of ensuring that we do discuss on the strategies that we'll put in place to ensure that the ANC wins election in 2024. And ourselves as women that will be carrying the ANC on our backs, ensuring that we deliver a decisive victory. We will make sure sure that we discuss it also at the conference. In terms of the state of readiness of our conference, the National Conference Preparatory Committee has been meeting regularly since the adoption of a new roadmap to conference and has to date received reports on the verification of branches, delegation to conference, work on the Electoral Commission, finance and security-related matters, as well as conference logistics. As part, of course, of the preparations towards conference, it is only fair that the ANC, represented, of course, by the Secretary General's Office of the ANC, as I've already said, to meet regularly with the ANC Women's League National Task Team in order to be able to verify some of the processes that are unfolding as we are preparing for our conference. So as a result, the National Task Team of the ANC Women's League met yesterday with the SGO of the ANC to assess the state of the readiness of the 13th National Conference. Given the fact that the mandate of the entity is obviously derived from the ANC, the Secretary General Office, as I've already said, was instrumental in the role of the preparations towards our national conference, with yesterday's meeting being part of the ongoing engagements, as I've already said. Of course, part of our preparations for the conference, including the committees that we had, also had members of the ANC NEC that assisted us, most especially on logistics, on security, on dispute resolutions, and of course registration. The meeting conducted an assessment of the pre-registration process, which had taken place from the 7 to 9 of July, which was this past weekend. Pre-registration is undertaken in provinces with the intention of resolving any outstanding issues and disputes ahead of our formal registration at conference, and to ensure that delays usually encountered during registration are dealt with head-on and on time. The meeting welcomed the fact that several provinces, most notably Western Cape, Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Free State, and I'm happy to see the convener and coordinator of Free State here, and Gauteng pre-registration proceeded smoothly, with most of their delegates successfully being registered. Our provinces such as KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape experience a variety of challenges which require further attention. Our assessment, however, is that there is still room for improvement in the registration process in all our provinces. The ANC Women's League NTT further seeks to give greater focus, attention to the dispute resolution and appeal processes to ensure that all matters raised by our branches, regions, and provinces are fully attended to. Following the exhaustion of the issues raised, the meeting determined a need for more time to resolve the issues identified and which are critical to the convening of a successful conference that should obviously be legitimate. Accordingly, it has also resolved to postpone the national conference by a week to the 21st until the 23rd of July 2023, in order to allow necessary measures to be undertaken to uphold the credibility and integrity of this particular conference. We know that most of the time, most of conferences of the ANC do struggle as it relates to registration. As the ANC Women's League, we then now decided that we want to set a new standard. We want to make sure that when we do our registration, it should only take 1 day. It is for this reason that we are going to put more of our time in pre-registration processes that will then now be looking at whatever challenges that have been raised by our branches, our regions, as we have already said, but also look at the disputes and appeals that have been brought in to our attention. As the ANC Women's League entity, we reaffirm our commitment to a credible and thus successful 13th National Conference. The primary goal of the 13th National Conference are to consolidate, safeguard and advance decisive action towards the liberation and emancipation of women, as I've already said. And we will not deflect from this momentous task we have been entrusted with. Thank you very much. Allow me, before I go, convener of the ANC Women's League NTT, to congratulate one of our nation's pride's two-time Olympic champion, Caster Semenya, for winning her discrimination case in the European Court of Human Rights. You would all recall, ladies and gentlemen and comrades, that she was unfairly discriminated against by the World Athletics, which banned her from participating in certain races due to her testosterone levels. We welcome this judgment as the ANC Women's League by the court, as it further affirms the call for a fair and just treatment of women, most especially those who are athletics and are having other professional statuses in different sporting disciplines. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much, Comrade Coordinator. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the statement of the National Task Team. May we take questions, if any? If it is as clear as mud and you don't have any questions, that's also okay. But I'm looking around. Please raise your hand if you've got a question. I've noted you, Natasha. Sorry, Baba, I can't see properly who's there at the back, but I've noted you. Do we have a third hand? Okay, let's take 3 in this round and then we'll see if there's a need to come back.
And with the postponement of the conference, how can you, or how will the leadership of the ANC, ANC Women's NTT, ensure that the various delays that we've seen by the other leagues, the ANC youth league, don't occur again? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. There's a gentleman on this side of the room.
Good afternoon. My name is Norman Masubui from City Press. My question is, since this is not the first time that you've been postponing the conference, how confident are you that this time around the postponement by a week, all the disputes will have been resolved? And what made you believe that you will do so if you haven't done so? Done by now? Don't you think you will require more time than a week? Because my understanding is that other branches and provinces and regions and all this still need to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
My name is Mawani from the Sunday World. My question is, how do you, as this testing, insulate yourself? I mean, there's been a lot of, pointing fingers lately about interference from first to sixth floor, as in the motherboard, and by testing, pushing for president outcomes. I mean, it was very live just the past week in the ANC Youth League conference. How do you guys at this testing insulate yourselves from applications of also having a president outcome, which in this event is alleged to have been pushing for the outcome that favors the state that has a necessity to negotiate this president? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm tempted to take 1 or 2 other hands if there's any. Okay. Leadership? I'm sure they won't follow up.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Thank you very much, Kusela, for the opportunity. I wish to speak on 2 points. The first point I want to clarify relates to, I think, the last question. The last question actually raises the issue of the integrity of process. And I think it is on that we would like to draw the attention of the media, and through the media, the world, to the fact that we should always seek to resist the temptation of looking at what happened next door and therefore this is how we are going to interpret what happens here. Let us resist that temptation and look at the facts of the matter, look at the information before you that we would hopefully give you today in this press briefing interaction, but also ongoing and into conference and at conference during the deliberations of conference. So I think let's judge what happens in the specific interactions in those spaces and resist to have a generic understanding and an assumption that therefore colors how you understand and you interpret things that come out of our interaction with you. So we will request that you talk to issues as raised and presented by the women as they are in this formation led by the NTT of the ANC Women's League. So we can assure you that we took the time welcoming the opportunity of the ANC led by the Secretary General's office requesting to be convinced by us as a particular structure of the ANC that we are ready for conference. And it was around midnight when we actually all collectively sitting in that meeting came to the conclusion that we need an extra week. Not to provide you with a perfect product. There's never a perfect product when you are preparing for a conference. I'm sure you had enough years, you've had enough opportunities to observe what happens in that space. What happens is the emergence of all kinds of manifestations of individual interests and forces at play that come into that space. That's a normal human behavior. And I'm sure it's not an ANC thing. You can go all over and watch conferences of every formation of different aspects of life and areas of endeavor, and you will see how those manifestations of human interests will then collide in that space as you move towards that high point. Ours is to be focused on the integrity of process. And that was our focus last night. We looked at the report that the coordinator gave us, and we were a structure, the NTT, that includes representatives from all of the 9 provinces in the country. And it is those inputs that gave us a collective conclusion that an extra week should be adequate to enable us to finish up what we think is critical to finish up. 2 weeks ago, and I'm not referring to the prep committee that happened on Thursday last week because I was out of the country, I was just making my way back, so I was not physically there. But the week before, we had a prep committee because as the statement says that we've been meeting weekly, we've been meeting regularly and, consulting from different perspectives, different spheres and different formations and specific subcommittees that have been preparing for conference. And already that week, personally, I was satisfied that the majority of what needed to be done for ensuring that we do hold a credible conference was done. It was not 100%, but it was mainly done. So we have come here to share with you our conclusion that only a week will enable us to just tie up in certain of the subcommittee areas that we've been using for preparations for conference to ensure that we even improve on what we have done. In the specific area of disputes and appeals relating to disputes that would have been generated in the structures down in the communities where we are structured in branches, the basic and most important structure of the ANC, which is the branch. For my sins, I was given the role of chairing the National Dispute Resolution and Appeals Committee. Note the word appeals. So it's not the committee that is the primary place where you lodge your dispute. And so part of what has been happening in the past weekend, which indicates that there's an issue we still need to pay attention to understand what's going on, is that we started receiving directly from the ground disputes. And yet our guidelines, which were sent around the country to all 9 provinces to guide the processes of members in the branches lodging their disputes, indicate that you lodge your dispute in the area nearest to you. You don't say, I know Maruping in Johannesburg, I'll just go straight to her. No, you don't do that. The integrity of process, is there to ensure that you do a thorough job of paying attention to those matters that need attention. Because by the time a dispute arises, it's an indication that there's something that needs attention. Sometimes it's a fabricated dispute. So you must also be alive to that. And therefore we are saying right now we are at the point when the National Dispute Resolution Committee had sat for 2 weeks receiving and paying attention to appeals emanating from the provinces. Where in the provinces, in each province, we have a provincial dispute resolution committee. And it is that structure that must listen to the disputes, that must understand what the issues of that dispute are, and what problems are indicated by the actual generation of that dispute. Because a dispute arises indicating that there's some misunderstanding between people, among people. There are usually these human relations issues that always come in this form at this point in the process of every organization. So the National Dispute Resolution Committee sat and listened to appellants, not disputes. The National Dispute Resolution Committee does not deal with disputes. It deals with appeals. And therefore, those would be outcomes from provincial processes that would have processed the disputes. Processed the disputes, arrived at conclusions, and declaring their verdicts on those disputes. It is beyond that that an appeal arises. An appeal is about dissatisfaction with the outcomes of the PDRC's process. And therefore, that person would then appeal to the National Dispute Resolution Committee. And that's what we have dealt with, and we have listened to complainants, appellants, who are sometimes one person, two people, three people, all agreeing that no, they don't think the outcome was fair to their case. Secondly, we would listen to a person who had been deployed in that actual exercise, that BGM or BBGM, that BBGM or BGM space. Well, after that, we would listen to the Provincial Dispute Resolution Committee team, and they would share with us their conclusions and the basis on which they arrived at those conclusions. And therefore, the National Dispute Resolution Committee would have a basis for itself arriving at its own independent conclusions and saying we agree or we don't agree with the verdict of the PDRC. So that report now we have compiled, we have interacted about it with our legal comrades, and we will, at the right time, share it at the right platform. So those are the issues that I'd like to share with you on, and therefore this is the 1 week we still need just to wrap up on a few loose ends in this background which I have shared with you. Thank you.
Good day. Good day, media, ladies and gentlemen. Mama, I think you said a mouthful. You've actually lectured everyone who's here to understand all these processes. Mine was only on the interference. I just wanted to remind the media people and all members of communities that we are first members of the ANC. We are members of the ANC before we become members of the Women's League. Directly, we join the ANC, later you join the Women's League. So we're not expecting interference from we are the ANC. So we don't know which ANC are you referring to, because we are first members of the ANC. And the other matter is that we also need to remind you that we are a national task team appointed by the ANC mother body. ANC NEC appointed this team. Meaning we'll always go back to the ANC, seek guidance, seek leadership. Because we are given we are not elected. We were appointed by the very same ANC NEC. So there's no interference. I just wanted to really coordinator raise this matter so that it becomes clear that we are first members of the ANC, we are not expecting any interference, and we are obviously the structure of the Women's League, it is autonomous on its own. So we're not expecting any interference, but we are expecting leadership guidance from the ANC, and that's what we are going to do. My other point was on the readiness coordinator. The venue is secured. The venue for registration is secured. The venue for the conference itself is secured. The accommodation is secured. These are all indications that we were or we are still ready to go to a conference. It's only these issues that have been highlighted that needs to be addressed, and then we'll be going forward. And ours now, what is left with, it's only to indicate to the very same venue people say, now we have moved from the date of the 14th, we are on the 21st. That's all what is outstanding for now. Other than that, I think we are still within our roadmap and we are on the track. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The number of branches that actually went for BGMs and BBGMs were like 2,700. ANC Women's League have got about 2,980 branches. So obviously there will be those that pass or those that probably are disqualified, but we need 70% to go to conference, which have already actually surpassed if you then now do the maths. So I think I've answered.
Thank you very much, comrades. Can I check if there are any additional questions? No questions?
Well, maybe not really a follow-up, but still on the numbers, how many delegates are expected at the conference itself? Delegates, not by chiefs.
Sorry, Mawanda. I think the reason we didn't go into that detail is that next week we'll still be doing a briefing now to give you the final numbers. But the ceiling is around 3,500, but we'll break it down to you in terms of what we have. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Can I please remind you to check your accreditation status as the media? We will issue out a new roadmap for us down from a media perspective, but you will collect your media accreditation, I think, next week, Wednesday and Thursday at NASREC, once those processes have been finalized. Thank you so much for making the time. And Usara is here if anybody has media requests, interview requests following from this. Thank you very much. Siyabonga leadership.